Hi there, everyone. It is February already and time for the February Tarot, February 1st, 2026. I hope you're warm and safe. I hope you have electricity wherever you are. We had quite a terrible storm this past week, so sending good energies for lots of electricity. And that's actually one of the topics on my list this month or this week, this month. Last month, after hearing the prediction that 2026 would be the year the voice of the planet would rise, I asked the question, wow, what will she say to us? And now I'm wondering if that snow and ice storm that we just had is one of the more gentle reminders of who's in charge here. It might be Mother Earth. Heads up there. This whole issue got me wondering how the electric grid would hold up, and the future of the grid became my first question. So after watching and listening to Donald Trump's speech at Davos, I was curious about his future, and that became the basis of my second question. Next, I asked about the impacts of what is going on in Minneapolis, and lastly, the last question was about the webs of illusion that have been created by social media. So the specific questions are, number one, what can the cards tell us about the future of our electric grid? Number two, what do the cards have to say about the future of Donald Trump? Number three, what advice does the animal kingdom have regarding the long-term impact on the U.S. of the fraud in Minneapolis, the ICE operations there, and what appears to be a color revolution in progress? Number four, what advice does the plant kingdom have regarding how to get out of the web of lies and illusions created by social media, YouTube, and others? And the cards drawn were, number one, the Seven of Swords. Number two, card number two was the Ten of Swords. Card number three was the Eagle, number one in the Animal Medicine deck. And card number four was Yarrow, number 15 in the Herbal Astrology Oracle. So let's look at these a little bit more deeply. Question number one was, what can the cards tell us about the future of our electric grid? Now, this question is really not the best kind of question to ask the Rider-Waite Tarot deck, because Rider-Waite is really all about human development and a certain process of unfolding. And we're talking about an electric grid here. But I was curious to see what card would come up. And then I was really surprised at the card drawn, the Seven of Swords, because this offered much more relevance than I expected. The Seven of Swords is the card of, get this, contradictions that continue to support those who keep moving ahead in spite of failing to update themselves or their information. Contradictions that continue to support those who keep moving ahead in spite of failing to update themselves or their information. So I thought that was a pretty good description of our reliance on our electric grid and our assumption that we can continue to race into a future filled with electronics and technology and yet not pay any attention to the electric grid that makes those electronics work. The card shows a prominent figure carrying 5 swords, holding onto the blades with bare hands as he tiptoes forward and yet is looking backwards. Swords represent thought and the intellect. And since our question is about the electric grid, The symbolism here is that we've been using this form of electrical energy for such a long, comfortable time that we're not seeing the current danger it presents. That danger is, what if it quits or breaks down? We are not looking forward. In effect, we're looking at the current system put together so long ago in the past and expecting it will always be there, just like it always has been. The danger of being cut or cut off is shown in those bare hands holding the blades. 5 swords, we have 5 swords here. These symbolize a turning point, but how can we make a turn if we're looking backward at the past? The figure is walking on tiptoe, on the balls of his feet, and this indicates 2 things. One, that we must step quietly and carefully with our electric system, lest we cause some problem that overburdens it. And 2, that we must begin to move quietly and lightly into a future where we have begun to think deeply about updating the whole system. That's a big deal. The figure wears a red hat and red boots with fringe around all of them, both boots and the hat. And that symbolizes that red is a bit of passion and concern in a few people, but they and the whole issue might be considered to be a fringe issue that's really not demanding any drastic change yet. Legs are what hold us up. And the blue leggings point to problems holding up the grid, problems causing worries and stresses, perhaps brownouts or blackouts that point to a need for a whole new approach. Brown is the color of the businessman and business. Brown means business. And the brown tunic represents the businessmen who are involved in supplying electricity. Not only are they holding the grid together, they are the best starting point for detailed assessment of what's needed, where it's needed, and how to supply it. There are 2 swords stuck in the ground behind the figure. They're just kind of standing there, and they indicate the current capacity of the grid, while the figure carrying 5 of the swords symbolizes that we are moving into a future that will require 5 times more electricity than we now generate. Those 2 swords just standing there show that anything could come and knock them down because they don't have anything supporting them. Winds, storms, floods, fires, war, population growth, changes in the makeup of local businesses, new science, new discoveries. Any or all of these can cause serious interruptions in the services people are counting on. The heads up signaled by those 2 swords standing there by themselves likely has to do with don't wait until something catastrophic occurs and only a couple areas have grid access. They stand as a reminder. Start moving in the right direction now. There are some brightly colored tents in the background, and those tents back up all of this. Tents symbolize a much more primitive form of shelter that does not have electricity. Don't see a tent wired for electricity. Tents point to temporary situations closer to camping than to home or business ownership. Tents indicate mobility, maybe having to move, or get out of a particular region, and the absence of settlement or feeling settled. Tents point to homelessness and disruption caused by unanticipated changes. And both of those, homelessness and unanticipated changes, are accompanied by lack of commitment and unrest. Can't do anything about it, been kicked out, etc., lost my place, can't afford it, whatever. Tens represent the absence of commitment to the system and to a settled society. A group of people can be seen far off in the distance on the horizon. And beyond them, a layer of clouds is just beginning to come over the horizon. Now, the people in the distance are really small. They're tiny. You can almost hardly notice them there. But that symbolizes people who are not seen as important or relevant. Do we have leaders and businesses that see people as unimportant? Do they care that a new electric grid is needed and the time to begin is now, before anything happens that would cut off certain groups and leave them in the dark? Those clouds low on the horizon say that problems are coming, and that bright yellow ground and sky together, it's yellow all the way around, together represent a huge need for an illuminated, conscious, forward-looking redesign of the whole system. The Seven of Swords calls for conscious living that requires leaving behind doubts about what is or will be needed, because we are going to need electricity, no doubt. It demands looking ahead, staying down to earth, and nurturing a slow, steady, intelligent process of thinking about our grid and how to deliver energy to the homes and residents of the future. The Seven of Swords is known as the Lord of Futility and Unstable Efforts. And that was futility, not utility. Futility, Lord of Futility. And the number 7 is all about designs, plans, and adopting the confidence to learn something new and more appropriate. 7 represents a threshold that marks where we can or must go next, and it indicates a boundary that limits or defines the grid in its present condition as something needing reflection and assessment. Key words for the Seven of Swords are boundary, challenge, assessment, wisdom, judgment required, objective, scientific advice, resources, instability, purposeful, threshold, admonition, evasion, conscious living, doubts, and unsolved puzzles. Question number 2. What do the cards have to say about the future of Donald Trump? I asked this question almost on a whim after listening to his speech at Davos last week and then seeing an avalanche of headlines, pro and con, about what he's doing or not doing, and so on and so on. For 10 years now, I have maintained an attitude that allows me to swing wildly from not trusting him at all to sort of trusting him, to suddenly understanding what he's doing and deciding it's okay, I trust him. This swinging back and forth drives some people nuts. But by giving myself this permission to not, I have to pick a position, I don't have to pick a side. That allows me to maintain an openness and an understanding of all sides of the Trump argument. And like I said, this often gets me in trouble with people who are firebrands pushing their point of view, but that's okay. Anyway, the last thing I expected was to draw the 10 of Swords. When you look at the card, you see a dead body lying on the edge of a river with 10 swords in his back. The sky is mostly black with just a narrow band of yellow above the mountains on the far side of the river. The body has a red cloth over it, and the fingers of the right hand form the sign of divine blessing. Of course, my instant reaction when I saw this card was one of shock because of the obvious first impression of disaster that this card often brings, and which I still get even after 45 years of working with tarot. However, the Ten of Swords actually represents wisdom, maturity, and having reached the end of all idols and idolatry. People stop fooling themselves. They stop lying to themselves. They stop chasing after false gods and false hopes and, etc. This is an extremely powerful indicator that Trump will bring us or force us to a peak of understanding about a situation that has been, quote, destructive of the mind, alienated us from Mother Nature, and cut us off from the true nature of ourselves. Wow. Let me say that again. Trump is going to bring us or force us to a peak understanding about a situation that has been destructive of the mind, alienated us from Mother Nature, and cut us off from the true nature of ourselves. This card is also a triumph over destruction and the unnecessary sacrifice of something rare and full of life. It's not really a card of death, of physical death. It's a card that is the death of illusions. And it warns against hanging on to illusions, the past, things that don't work, and especially things that will end in disaster. It calls for the ability to see impending disaster before it hits and to draw new conclusions based on today's experiences, not the past. In asking about the future of Donald Trump, I did not structure the question to focus on what we would think about Donald Trump in the future. Therefore, we should take the card to represent the vision he holds or the future he's trying to create or trying to bring about. With that as our starting point, the Ten of Swords carries a pretty strong reminder in that black and yellow sky that dark times may surround the end of the beliefs, the idols, and the ways of life that we once thought were normal, things we took for granted. They were the way life was. The black indicates extreme tension, fears, suppression, and angers. But that little streak of yellow indicates a new dawn for those who can let go of the past and focus on the future. That will probably be difficult for those who want revenge. Watch out. Vengeance will pull you into deep pits where loss of freedom, love, and health linger endlessly, accompanied by sorrow. That yellow sunrise on the horizon points to new perspectives, new thinking, hope, and the opening of new opportunities, but only if you are open to such things. Crying over the past obscures your ability to see the new paths forward. That red cloth wrapping the bottom half of the figure, that red cloth is fabric, and that red cloth represents the fabric of life that once shaped the passions and the lifestyles people immerse themselves in. The majority of the swords, 6 of them, are piercing that red cloth, indicating that there will be many aspects of life that will change completely. 3 of the swords are piercing the upper half of the body, approximately where the 3rd, 4th, and 5th chakras are. These are the energy centers of power, love, and voice. The 10th sword is piercing the head, home of thoughts, ideas, understanding, and creativity. So let me say it again. The message here is that no area of life will be unchanged. And in fact, one of the messages of this card is pretty close to something that I've seen in titles of various YouTube videos lately. The card's message: nothing from the past can fully prepare you for what is to come. What this hints at is that fighting to hang on to anything from the past will just not be helpful and will use up energy needed to adjust to the future. The body is lying on the edge of the river, and this is the river of life, reminding us that the spirit of life is always available, and it's going to be something we will need. There may be moments of mourning and grief, but we are advised to mourn, cry, and then blow our nose and look for the blessings that come with the fullness of life. That right hand with its fingers in the form of a blessing says that what we are going through is something we need to go through, because the things we were chasing and believing were not going to keep us safe or sustain us. The river of life is like the fountain of youth. And even though there are a lot of mountains on the far side of the river, those mountains represent challenges that will become new opportunities once we have crossed to a new life. The number 10 is considered to be a number indicating the end of the line, such that the only options remaining are transition and a new beginning. The end of the line. Only options left are transition and new beginning. The word delta represents the Greek number deca, or 10, and the word delta itself symbolizes change, including fiery change caused by dominant leadership. That certainly describes Donald Trump. The 10 of Swords is known as the Lord of Ruin. And keywords for this card are affliction, sadness, a painful ending, transformation, new dimensions, nailed down, hidden blessings. Sorry, he's really nailed down, isn't he? New decisions, a thunderstorm brewing, total change of perspective, honor, desolation, and closure. So question number 3, what advice does the animal kingdom have regarding the long-term impact on the U.S. of the fraud in Minneapolis, the ICE operations there, and what appears to be a color revolution in progress? Wow. I don't know what I was expecting as I shuffled the deck, but it certainly wasn't the eagle, number 1 in the animal medicine cards. The eagle is the animal totem of the United States. And since our question was about impacts on the United States, when I pulled this card, it brought a verbal wow and goosebumps. The eagle is the symbol of the Great Spirit and our connection to the divine. We have in this country a divine purpose that has to do with complete self-governance. I've talked about this before. This self-governance started long ago with moving away from being ruled by kings, then setting up governments led by people that we chose, to then letting go of big governments and moving to small local governments, and eventually to taking full responsibility for governing the self in cooperation with those around us. That's where we're headed. So let's remember this destiny as we work through the issues revealed by Minneapolis. The eagle brings illumination, healing, and creation that is balanced in ways that allow all to be fed at all levels: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Illumination, healing, and creation that is balanced, allowing everybody to be fed at all levels. What more could we ask for? Eagle represents a time of testing and initiation for all of us, but it promises a wonderful feeling of relaxed contentment that follows the hard work involved. To pass the tests and to move into maturity and wisdom, Eagle urges taking time to understand and listen to one another. Its message is that it's time to expand consciousness in order to grasp the big picture from a higher perspective. What is that big picture? What are we to see when we look at the fraud in Minneapolis and the ICE activities there? What are we to do if there's a color revolution unfolding up there? Who would do such a thing and why? The U.S. has fomented color revolutions in many countries. Is it now being done to us? The eagle brings a warning that we have been broken. We have forgotten our power and our connection to the Great Spirit. It advises us to heal our broken wings and seek higher ground on which to build something new. It says, quote, "The eagle's nest is the home of the heart, and it cannot remain in a swamp." And that's really quite a relevant comment for the U.S. at this time. That whole swamp thing is what we've been dealing with for such a long time. Eagles are symbols of greater sight and perception. And the bald eagle is especially associated with water and thus emotions. Eagle also represents a need to learn to walk between the worlds. And we are definitely in between the old world and a new world that has not yet taken shape around us. Walking through this time requires learning to work with emotions, holding visions, going after visions, listening for messages from the higher self, listening to one another, and managing ourselves with great self-discipline. Ted Andrews' book, Animal Speak, points out that the eagle hints of resurrection, but only if 4 needs are met. Those needs are, first, the need to be creative and to give birth to new ideas and ways. In other words, try something new. Next, a willingness to experience extremes, and in doing so, facilitate the alchemy of change in the self. Wow. In other words, let yourself feel and let the extremes of the times change you at your core. It's alchemy. Third, a willingness to follow your passions, even if it means being scorched a little. Now, following your passions does not mean recklessly putting yourself in mortal danger. Follow your passions. Be wise. And fourth, a willingness to seek the true emotions within. And by doing so, rediscover the lost child who awakens to a higher sense of purity, passion, creativity, healing, and spirituality. So let me just clarify a few terms there. Purity means letting go of anger and doubts, replacing these with love and good-heartedness. And spirituality, it's the development of new meanings and the emergence of the true you. No more pretending, no more facades. One of the interesting aspects of eagle medicine is its insistence on knowing when to speak, how much, and how strongly. There is a time to shout a time to speak, and a time to be silent. Timing is critical here. And that is another message of this magnificent bird. It urges, stay alert while watching for opportunity to present itself, then grabbing that opportunity with perfect timing and intense power, using the situation wisely. The eagle is a predator, and that predator helps to keep the world in balance. Predators in the wild capture the weak and the sick, helping to keep the animal populations healthy and strong. Remove the predator, and you risk being overrun with critters that are out of control and throw everything into chaos and balance. Now, Eagle is not recommending that we put up with predators or become predators to one another. It is recommending that we recognize that we have allowed predatory systems and institutions to exist that deliberately create physical, mental, and emotional sickness. We are then told, oh, you have to take care of the sick and the poor. But as the numbers of sick and poor increase exponentially, this leads eventually to a society that doesn't work at all. This is a matter of emphasis. The emphasis should be on making sure that everyone is fed, healthy, educated, connected to nature, and integrated into society. Not on setting up whole systems designed to further increase a weak, sickly, and disturbed population. There will always be some who are born with unfortunate problems, and yes, they should be taken care of. But when the whole society is so busy taking care of a massive population of disabled, sick, or weak and disturbed individuals, there's no time or energy to focus on the governance issues that would create a healthy population. When this occurs, predatory people rise to fill positions of power. Worse, the distractions and demands of trying to care for those who cannot or will not take responsibility for themselves leads to the fact that nobody's minding the store. And we end up with a kind of fraud and corruption that are tearing us apart now. Is this the bigger picture that Eagle tells us we should be looking at? The number 1 is associated with the eagle, and this represents oneness and coming together as one. It tells us that regardless of what happens to the U.S., we still need to stick together. Keywords for the eagle are responsibility, karma, initiation, doors of opportunity, remaining grounded, sharp vision, reconnection to spirit, higher wisdom, feminine energy, illumination, legal freedoms, seeking answers, fear of the unknown, hard work, and new horizons. Question number 4. What advice does the plant kingdom have regarding how to get out of the web of lies and illusions created by social media, YouTube, and others? And the card drawn here was Yarrow, number 15 in the Herbal Astrology Oracle deck. Yarrow is a plant of harmony, equilibrium, discernment, and psychic boundaries. Watch your psyche. Who's intruding? That kind of thing. It has been used, Yarrow has been used for ages and ages. A 50,000-year-old skull found in Spain had bits and pieces of yarrow in its teeth. That's a long time. When we look at the card, we see a hand holding some yarrow, A pile of yarrow stems on the ground, a white heron with a long winding neck, a pair of scales, balanced scales, and an I Ching trigram with only 3 lines. The hand holding the yarrow symbolizes the fact that this plant is a gift. It's a gift to the world that all can benefit from. Yarrow is ruled by Venus and has been used for healing wounds, stopping bleeding, and relieving depression. It has a really pretty flower head of white that is associated with spiritual protection. And sometimes it comes in a rosy pink flower head that brings strength. It has delicately shaped fern-like leaves, and it grows easily in fields and on farms, and it requires little care or attention. In ancient days, the stalks of yarrow were often gathered, dried, cut into specific lengths, and then used by shamans. The shaman would ask a question and then throw the yarrow stalks on the ground and study the pattern they made for clues as to how to answer the question. This eventually gave rise to the system of divination known as the I Ching. The trigram shown on the card is called Li, which means fire. It represents fire. And it also represents clinging to something. Clinging to something, the way fire clings to a log and can't really burn or offer its brightness without that log. Yarrow also means to be like conditioned, like shaped and manipulated, conditioned, and to depend on something that brings brightness. So those are the meanings, okay? Fire, clinging to something, conditioned, being conditioned, and depending on something that brings brightness. Our question is about how to get out of the web of lies and illusions created by social media. And Yarrow then brings up the question, are we clinging to social media? If so, why? Is it possible that our great need to connect and communicate freely with one another has been severely interfered with by modern lifestyles, 9-to-5 jobs, and leaving families in the land in order to go wherever the most money can be made? Did we build up a huge backlog of connection and conversation needs that were only released by the appearance of social media? Social media has allowed many, many people to speak up, to criticize, to troll others without having to face the people they speak to. And it has allowed many to indulge in their alter egos and explore ways of being that they might have been ashamed of and would never have had the courage to try without the ability to hide behind screens. Social media has also allowed others with good intentions to step out and shine, to try to help, to inform, and try to fill in the huge gaps left by legacy media that obviously has a, we'll say, less than honorable agenda. But what has been the result of all of this speaking, criticizing, trolling, pretending, helping, gapping, and filling? It's been a web of lies and illusions, a matrix of confusion around what's real and what's fake, what's not real. It's created an atmosphere of distrust and an environment that's pretty much akin to a tinderbox of explosive anger. The warning of Yarrow is to beware of what happens when a population becomes emotionally drained and has no manners, no boundaries, and no civility left. Ooh. The white heron shown on the card backs up this warning and warns of aggression in service to self, which is a distortion of how aggression should be used. Each of us should aggressively go after our own illusions, shortcomings, and excuses. You're supposed to aggressively polish yourself. Yarrow and the Heron both call for a willingness to look critically at our relationship to social media, critique the self, and get back into balance. Doing so avoids the burnout that creates hopeless and dismissive attitudes. People who say, I don't care. We've all heard that social media was the brainchild of the CIA. And maybe they thought it was a great way to see inside our lives by having us spill our details all over the place. However, the contradictions, lies, and outright propaganda have woven a web of illusions that may end up breaking up the population in ways that bring about the end of the big intelligence organizations and even threaten governments. One of Yarrow's specific messages is, it's time to set solid boundaries to regain balance. This is a very important message, especially since social media and the web are not only intrusive, they now appear to be just the appetizer for complete immersion in AI. The danger is that we will not just be caught in webs of illusion. We may be totally lost in artificial realities. A number of people have already lost their lives in these realities. Does this mean we maybe ought to consider limiting our time on social media, setting guidelines, boundaries for who we watch and listen to, and get personally involved in restoring balance in our lives and in our world? I would say that's a pretty good idea. Each of us is a valuable, interesting, and capable human. We have a new world to create, and we need every one of us to get the job done. It may be hard work, but hard work leads to great satisfaction, which echoes the message of the eagle above that we were just talking about. And I'm sure you've heard the old adage, anything worth doing is worth doing well. Perhaps the thing we need to do most is immerse ourselves in the reality of a new world and learn to shine there. So that's it for this tarot. So let's do a quick review and summarize what we've said here, what we've covered. Question number 1, what can the cards tell us about the future of our electric grid? And the card drawn to shed light on this question was the 7 of Swords, a card that warns against going any further ahead if we're still looking backwards, still counting on old systems, and holding an attitude of carelessness that ignores the possibility of being cut, hurt, or left out of the amazing possibilities that electricity brings. The red hat and the boots say that only a few people are paying attention to this, passionate about it, and the future of the grid, but for everybody else, it's just a fringe issue. Those 2 swords standing behind the figure indicate the current capacity of the grid, but the figure carrying those 5 swords symbolizes that we are moving into a future that will require 5 times more electricity than we now generate. It's time for assessment and redesign. Question number 2, what do the cards have to say about the future of Donald Trump? And this question brought the 10 of Swords, a shocking card that represents a deep and powerful awakening, bringing the end of idols, idolatry, and ways of life that pursue what is neither safe nor secure and sustainable. It says that Donald Trump will bring about the ruination of something or someone that affects every aspect of life. And this will be a blessing. The card says we're headed into some very dark times, and it warns against hanging on to things that we once took for granted. The base message of this card: nothing from the past can fully prepare you for what is to come. Therefore, do not waste energy hanging on to the past. And then we have question number 3. What advice does the animal kingdom have regarding the long-term impact on the U.S. of the fraud in Minneapolis, the ICE operations there, and what appears to be a color revolution in progress? And the card drawn here, amazing, was the eagle, number 1 in the animal medicine deck. Our question is about the U.S., and the eagle is the symbol of the U.S., and as is often the case, the cards have just an uncanny ability to reflect truths we were not expecting, at least not from the cards. Although I guess that contradicts why we even look at them. It always surprises me how accurate the cards are. The eagle indicates that it's time for us to see the bigger picture, and that this often includes a period of great learning and recovery in order to experience resurrection. Events in Minneapolis may be an initiation into recovering our connection to the true spirit of ourselves, which then initiates resurrection, but not of the old world. The eagle tells us we must recover our passion and power. We are encouraged to learn to walk between the worlds, the old world that's coming apart and the new world that has not yet taken shape. And question number 4, what advice does the plant kingdom offer regarding how to get out of the web of lies and illusions created by social media, YouTube, and others? And Yarrow is the card drawn here, number 15 in the Herbal Astrology Oracle. Yarrow is used for healing and divination, but the practical message it carries is it's time to set solid boundaries to regain balance. Are we to set boundaries on how much we allow social media to shape our feeling and perception? In addressing the web of illusions spawned by social media, this card warns against becoming tied to social media or clinging to YouTube for a sense of identity and connection. Instead, it symbolizes learning to connect and work with those immediately around us. It also warns against becoming emotionally drained by the ups and the downs, the stresses of trying to decide what's real and what's fake. Being drained makes us easy targets for manipulation. And for this reason, Yarrow encourages self-examination, knowing who you are. It's kind of a know thyself kind of card. And a realistic assessment of our true needs and shortcomings as we approach a world that needs serious and creative rebuilding. So I hope you've enjoyed this tarot reading for the world. That's it for this month. I hope I planted a few seeds of new ideas, perspectives, and awareness of issues we are facing. So take care of yourself, and happy Valentine's Day to everyone, all of you, everywhere around the world. Maybe we should all go back to 2nd grade and invite one another to be my Valentine. Okay, so much love, and I'll see you in March. Take care.